But in your head, in your dream book, in your dream magazine, as a child, did you do anything for your 40s and 50s? Because I didn't.
No. Right. It's kind of like that. What is that?
Blank space.
Hey, I'm Yvonne Marchese, and you're listening to the Late Bloomer Living podcast. Let's get going. This is actually the first podcast recording for Late Bloomer Living ever. I'm not sure where it's going to end up in the episode order, but thank you, Donita, for coming on and being my first.
Of course, it's an honor.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Donita is also known as Donita Mama Bear, and I have been friends with Donita since high school. We were on the golf team together.
We were big golfers.
And have been friends ever since. And so, Donita had kids well before I did. And at some point, as her kids were growing up, she decided to become a coach and started a podcast. And the reason I'm talking to her today is because I want to hear about the pivot that she made, or let her tell you in her own words a little bit more about what she's doing now and how she pivoted and got into coaching. And you're not really coaching anymore, right? Directly?
A little bit here and there, but not so much.
But everything's kind of changed. So you've had a great, really cool transition in your life. That's really why I wanted to talk to you. So,
sure.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's really my honor to be your first podcast, because I know that you are going places and doing things. And when you talked to me about your idea of late bloomer living, I just thought that was fantastic. We both were going through some things, and having known each other so long, we know our parents, we know our siblings, we know things that, later in life, maybe you don't have those same
connections. Where the bodies are buried.
Yeah, where the bodies are. And so, we have a good connection, and we've always had that kind of friendship where if we couldn't talk for a bit, we just picked right up where we left off. And I was lucky, and Yvonne's side gig is a professional photographer. And so I was lucky enough to have her as my branding photographer and my children's wedding. And I will say that she doesn't really do weddings, but she did ours, and they turned out to be fabulous.
And a few here and there. It's fun. It's just not the main thing, but it is. I do like it. It's fun.
They are fun, and she's so good at it. And we were talking at the wedding and things, and we both hit a point where it's in the olden days, we would have been put out to pasture by now, and we would have been like, oh, you've peaked, you're over 50, it's time for you to go over there, start knitting, start writing your pen pal, whatever it is you do. But thank goodness modern times caught up, and we don't have to do that anymore. So
goodness.
Yes. And I did have a life before I started Donita Mama Bear, and before I've written a chapter in a book, and now I've written my own book. I've done some speaking events, things like this and I'm teaching a course on the anxiety reset right now. And I want to get into a lot more anxiety workshops, things like that, because I feel like in today's world, we're going to have a lot of people. I primarily focus on survivors because I am a 5-time cancer survivor, 11 surgeries. I was a caregiver to my mother-in-law who passed away in my husband's arms while I was there. And then I also, I lost my dad at a long time ago, and that was quite a shock. And then, ancillary things like empty nesters, and then, we're not empty nesters anymore. They all came back, and my son got married, because you were the photographer, this, and, they live with us now, and just, our life has come full circle. But in that time of when the kids were gone, I was a first grade teacher. And then I had my kids very young at 26 and 28. I stayed home with them until they went to college, and they defined me. They defined who I was. And the name Mama Bear was actually given to me by my kids' friends. because they knew that I was always going to be in their corner. And they also knew not to cross me or my cubs. So,
I did not know that the name came from your kids' friends. That's awesome.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So at a young age, when they were little, because they would always be like, go tell Miss Wheeler, she'll say something, and I'd march down to that school because I had taught at the school and I knew all the educators, and I'd march down there and I'd say, now, I don't think you're being like that fair with, Ted. There's some things you don't know that's going on, or, whatever. So I'm convinced there was a picture of me in the lounge with darts, but somebody's got to be there. And so I just decided to, I had one of my cancers, and my oncologist said the triple negative breast cancer. And the oncologist said, there's two things that'll bring it back. You can drink.
Real quick. How old were you and how old were the kids? They were in high school still, right? When you had the breast cancer, the triple negative breast cancer diagnosis.
I was 41. And
Mm-hmm.
William was going into his freshman year of high school, and Nick was in 7th grade.
Wow. Okay.
So they were pretty young.
Yeah.
It was a pretty, I come to find out that I didn't handle everything as well as I could have. So, kids, they're always your best, source of improvement. And so they let me know that I didn't handle the hair thing well. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. Cover yourself. So I do wish I had done a little different, but they were young. So formative years, my dad passed away. Actually, my dad passed away when William was a freshman, going to be a freshman, and that following June, so he was going to be a sophomore, and Nick was in 8th grade. I'm sorry. And so they were young and still formative. And
so those two events were pretty close together for you, with your dad passing, and then wow. Okay. I lost track of the timeline on that. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So it was, and you knew my dad. My dad was, you were in my dad's class.
Your dad.
Yeah. Well, I miss him so much. I miss him like every day in this tiniest little way. I don't cry anymore. I mean, I might right now, but I typically don't cry. But that is probably what set off in hindsight. My dad was probably the beginning of what started like the bottom of the tornado that went up and then got everything going. And then I kind of said, all right, I need to stop this tornado, and it needs to be just regular life. And, but yeah, that was the beginning of a really tough time frame for me, a good 10 years. Wow. So, I decided, so my oncologist said, if you want to have cancer again, you cannot exercise and you can drink. So, my treatment was pretty intense. I didn't want to revisit any of that ever again. I ended up doing it 4 more times, but at the time I was like hell-bent on not doing it. So I went to CrossFit because, that's the most exercise you can possibly do. And I really don't drink that much. It's an easy quit after, if that's what your oncologist said. So I did CrossFit for about 4 years, and then I got tired. My body got tired. So my friend of mine suggested I go to yoga, and I thought, all right, I'll go to yoga. And I did yoga, and then I just loved it. I loved the community. I loved the people. I loved the place. They hired me to work the front desk. And in my usual go-getter self, I had everything done like the 3rd day. So I had a little bit of extra time on my hands at the yoga studio, and she let me do a lot of like their social media and things like that. So I learned a lot of skills that lend itself to starting your own company because I was doing them for the yoga studio. I did social media. I learned Instagram. I learned business emails. And as easy as that sounds, I had never been exposed to business emails because I was a teacher and a mom.
Yeah. Yeah. After all those years, right?
Right. So I didn't know like the protocol for companies or anything else like that. But I worked there almost about 3 years, and it was a really good learning experience. I learned more about myself than I had in years. So I feel like even though it was a challenge to work there, I feel like it was probably the best thing I ever did.
And how old were you at that point when you were working at the yoga studio?
Let's see. I turned 50 when I was still working there. So I think I was like 47 when I went to work $10 an hour with my college degree.
Yeah.
super cool. I was
Yeah.
like, good Lord.
Uh-huh.
I just think to myself, why did I go to college? So, but I do like the teaching, and it just I felt myself being a teacher at the yoga studio as well, like just that same organizational skills. I can't get it out of me, but my dad was a professor, my mom was
You're
a
one of the
teacher.
most organized people I know. You're one of those people who can whip things into shape in no time.
I didn't say I did it well. I might get it done. So, long line of teachers, and it's just a burning desire in me to um, not have anybody go through what I went through. Like, let me take the hit for you. Let me just tell you here, this is what happened. This was the outcome. You can avoid this by doing this. And not that I'm right or I know everything, but just that jumping off point where you can maybe make things a little easier. That was a burning desire in my soul. It was just, you have to share your experiences.
When did you realize that you had the desire to help people through the survivorship and the cancer journey and everything? Because that's kind of where it started, right? Was
Right.
with
Yes.
helping
Yep.
people through the cancer journey, through
Yep.
diagnosis to survivorship, right?
Yes. And that's kind of what happened. Like at the yoga studio, I would talk to people as they came in. I remembered their names. I'd be like, hi, Ted, how are you today? How's your wife? Is she feeling better? How's her treatment? And it seemed to always, and at the time, I didn't realize that would be the population of a yoga studio because I hadn't had that exposure.
Mm-hmm.
So I realized over time that, of course, yoga is a safe place to come. So I wanted to keep it safe for them. But I did have an ability to really connect one-on-one with most of the people that came in there. And I think that built my confidence in being able to talk to people. And then I thought, well, why don't I be a coach? And this was like 4 years ago. So I just hopped online and got a certificate. Like, I would like to tell you it was harder than that, but it was not. And then I decided, okay, I think I want to be a cancer coach. And there was no regulations for cancer coaches whatsoever. So I just kind of did what I thought I would have needed while I was in cancer. And then it's funny how things have a way of working out. I thought, okay, I'll just be a cancer coach. It'll be pay as you see fit, because I hadn't learned to put a dollar amount on my value, because at the time I didn't know if I had that much value. So, as a businesswoman who
Second
goes,
guessing yourself and
sure.
all
Well, I
that.
didn't have the experience either.
Right.
Teachers get their reassurance from their students. I love you,
Mhm.
Mrs. Wheeler. Or when I was pregnant with William, one of my kids one day said, "You look really fat and tired." I was like, oh, so,
Feedback.
but I was used to that. So I just sat with, for probably 6 months, I'm a teacher. I've had these experiences. And at this point I had the triple negative breast cancer, which I did have a 1% chance of living, which I was like, oh, you'll need more than that. I just need the 1%. I'm good. And then I had the ovarian cancer, where I did a partial hysterectomy, and they removed ovarian cancer from my left side. And I had done that at this point. And then I had some skin cancer on the side of my face, non-melanoma malignant skin cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And it took them, oddly enough, as many surgeries to get this right as it did for them to get the margins on my breast right. So I had been through 4, and I thought at the time, oh, that's a good amount. I really feel like I have a wide spectrum too. It's breast cancer and ovarian and skin. That's a pretty large percentage of cancers. So, I think I can speak to this. And then I had a client, and he had pancreatic cancer, and he knew he was going to pass away when we started talking, and I started coaching him. And my son was in Italy, Nick was in Italy, and we went over to see him. He graduated, and instead of walking on the stage, he had us come, and we spent some time with him over there. And that client passed away while I was there, and it took everything out of me. It just made me reevaluate everything and realize that I couldn't handle that. I can't handle that. So I got out of the cancer coaching because I wasn't strong enough to do it. And I'm fine with that. I have a girl that I recommend, Talaya Dindy. She is a cancer doula, and she is wonderful. I send everybody her way, and that is her skill, her talent. She's fantastic.
Wow.
And so I thought, okay, well, I really need to see what I'm going to do now. And about that time, my mother-in-law was diagnosed with, well, Whitney, my husband, was laid off. And then 2 days later, his mom was
Hang
diagnosed.
on. I'm gonna back you up because somewhere along the line in there, besides the coaching, you started your radio show or your
Oh, I did.
podcast.
Yes.
So
Yes.
when was that?
So I started the company and I met, so when I decided to go ahead and make a logo and like do everything, I asked, I can't remember how I met her. I asked a friend, hey, who do you use for your logo stuff? And oh, she was recommended to me by somebody else. And so she told me this guy, Aaron. So I called Aaron and he got me a logo and everything. And then I called her back to say thank you. And she said, hey, I'm going to this meeting this week. Do you want to go? She didn't tell me what it was for. And I was like, okay, what? But I didn't realize that she didn't tell me what it was for until I got there. And it was a meeting for new podcasts. Wow. And so she had heard me speak, like, I guess our conversations or something like that. And she said, you have a good voice for podcasting. And at the time it was still called a radio show because it's been like almost 4 years now. So podcasting was just, in my world, podcasting was just getting started. I have no idea what it was like in the real world, but in my world, I was just starting to understand podcasts and what they did. So I went to this meeting, and I believe you met Katie and Joe at the wedding. Mm-hmm. They were my first podcast people over at Society Bites Radio, and Katie and Joe were just wonderful. I just had to get a time and a date and show up, and they did everything else. And it was a paid service. So I felt like they did a great job getting me out there, getting everything going, being patient with me, holding my hand. And then when Billy was diagnosed with her cancer, my mother-in-law, I called her and I said, I can't do this. She said, yes, you can. It's 4 people a month. You can do this. You can do one yourself.
You started off with an interview format, right?
Yes.
Did you ever do episodes where it was just you talking?
I did.
Yeah, I did. So you had a mix of just you and interviews. So you were setting up those interviews with people. So that was a lot of legwork, right?
Yes.
And a lot to try to keep up with while you're trying to be a caregiver.
Right. And well, at that point, I had already been doing it for almost 2 years. So the real beginning of the podcast, you get your intro and your outro, you get your logo, you get your interviewers, you have to get your email system set up, how you confirm how they do it. Now with Zoom, it's a lot easier. You can just send the Zoom link. Whereas before, Katie and Joe, before Zoom, or you could really do it, we were doing it on Skype before. I had to go through Katie or Joe because they had the means to do it. And they set it up to where it was very economical, easy to do.
Did you record in your own home back then, or did you go into a studio with them, or you just still did it in your own home and then sent them files?
Yeah, she did it all. I just called her.
Okay.
But I could have gone in. They did have a studio. It's just they lived near the Tampa area, and I was in Hollywood near Miami. Gotcha. So it was like a 4-hour drive. I could have, but I just didn't.
So you did it for a good long time before Billy got sick, right? And so you had a pretty good listenership by the time all that went down, right?
Surprisingly, like I was very surprised. It was probably, first of all, 2 things that I do that I don't think you're supposed to do, but it's whatever. I never listen to them because I cannot. I am the world's worst critic, and I just 2 minutes into it,
I was like, you never listen to who? But you never listen to your own podcast.
No, I do not. I do not. And I should. I probably should learn something, but I have other people listen and tell me. So I just don't know what's real and not real, what's my inner critic. And, I'm probably at the point where I could listen to them now, but in the beginning I could not because I would have stopped.
Did you, so you just brought up your inner critic, which is something that I always feel like is a big thing for people in midlife, for anybody really. But I feel like especially you get to a certain point in your life and that inner critic is solid. It's a companion that's been with you for a long time and it knows how to talk to you and take you down. So when you decided to become a coach, when you decided to try a podcast or a radio show, or whatever, did you have that inner critic in the back of your head, like, wah, wah,
Oh,
wah, 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 or
all the
did you just decide, oh, I'm just going to go for it? Why not? Was
well,
it easy?
it was probably half and half, like, okay, I'm just going to go for it. And I've learned to, I'm a very good ignorer. Like I could ignore things pretty well. So one of the reasons I don't listen to them is because I know the things that I could have done better when I got off the interview. I make a mental note for myself. I keep notes, and then I had to quiet my inner critic by not listening to my own podcast. So that's how I handled it, because I couldn't, there wasn't a broad audience for me to discuss it with either. I couldn't, like, my husband was good, but he worked all the time. The kids were in college. Very few of my friends had the ability to walk me through something for an hour during the day. Just, it became easier to do the more I did it. And then it became easier to be less critical the more people started podcasting. So,
Do you feel like part of why you were able to silence that critic is maybe because you had a really big reason to do what you were doing?
oh, for sure. Like, I think if it was something else, like if it wasn't like a life and death situation of like cancer and how to be a survivor. And I spent like the first 6 months of my survivorship from my first cancer in isolation. I painted my home. I did anything other than for a couple of reasons. First of all, for my immunity, because I was completely shot. And second of all, because I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was very angry. So I went through a very angry time where I was just mad, and all I did was paint the inside of my house. It was so weird. It's definitely a release for me, that inner painting, that quietness, being by myself, building up the bravery. And also to imagine at the same time, my physical appearance was pretty bad. I looked like that girl from Violet from the Willy Wonka, I blew up with all the steroids. I was bald. I didn't have any hair anywhere. My nails had fallen out, I couldn't walk on my feet all the time. I didn't even know who I was. It was like I stepped into a cancer outfit every day. And then, I could barely take it off or be by myself. It was a situation that I didn't think anybody else should have to go through. So that inner desire to share that hurt, the pain, the physical, the emotional, the pain of just you and your cancer, where nobody else can live in that spot except for the two of those things. I don't want to say people, but the two of those things. And that desire to share that, to make it easier for anybody else, is what kept me going. I mean, there was probably, I think Katie talked me off the ledge, I don't know, 300 times. And, there's still times, even when I do now, and I'm probably almost 150 episodes into it or something, I still get really nervous. If somebody does, if my electronics aren't working correctly, I get a hot flash, I still get flustered, and I know there's so many ways I could improve. But I just like everybody else at this particular stage in our life, I'm doing what I can with the time that I have available. So, and like now we have a lot of time, and I probably could have improved some, but I haven't gone down that alley yet.
Yeah. Well, we haven't even talked about like this particular moment in time and all that. So really interesting because, funny enough, like you and I, as much as I've known you, we never really talked about what launched you into becoming Donita Mama Bear and doing what you're now doing. And that has then, since you started it, now you've pivoted, and I see a change happening with you where you've taken on going out and becoming a speaker, and you're really taking on more. It's really exciting to watch,
As weird as this sounds, not in a stuck up way, but I'm so proud of me. I was the yes mom. I was the stay at home mom. I was the typical like 1950s wife, I'm sure a lot of my friends that are women were like, oh, please stop throwing us backwards. But now I've stepped into a role where I feel like I've definitely, I'm like living a second life, which is exactly what this is about, right? Your midlife, because we know retirement's different. We've seen specks of that. We knew what like going to college. You knew it's like you had a mental plan. I go to college, and then I don't know about you, but here's what happened with my plan as a child. Oh, I'm gonna finish school and get really good grades. I'm gonna go to college, and then I'm gonna, whatever it was, be a teacher. I wanted to be a gemologist, but that wasn't available in my school. So, you pick these things, but in your head, in your dream book, in your dream magazine, as a child, did you do anything for your 40s and 50s? Because I didn't.
No. Right. It's kind of like that. What is that time?
Blank space.
Weird middle years,
Yeah. And, because as grandparents and then retirement, you already know all of that. And you've heard of that as a child. So you've heard of, my grandparents are retired. They travel. I see them. I go to their house. Right?
Yeah.
What in the world? What happened to our dream book between like 40 and 55? Like what happened?
Yeah. I feel like the middle age years are kind of like the awkward years, like it's kind of similar awkward. Like from when you become that cute little kid.
Yeah.
And you're growing into yourself as an adult, you get those teenage awkward years. And I feel like, again, that transition happens from being a young adult to then becoming an old person. Everything starts to go wrong.
Well, and then just think about
it's like, what is happening to my skin and this hair?
Hormones. It's hormones all over again.
And it's like this awkward transition. And like once you get to like the old person place, you're just a cute old person,
right,
but in between there's this like,
well, and the hormones, and they're not just women, men do it too. I mean, that's why I think it's called menopause, because like I always tell Whitney, you're in menopause. You need to stop. But there is, think about how many of your friends that right now who have gotten a divorce, who have had some tragic loss in their life. It is that time in life, just like when you look back at the middle school pictures or early high school pictures, you're like, oof, that was awkward. I think it's the same thing now. Like, just like you're saying, you have like a second, and now there is, but it used to be that you're bringing it to light. People are bringing it to light, but otherwise you just flounder around in this time frame. You're like, what is happening right now?
Right. And everything that you did when you were younger, like if you raise, if you're a person who had kids, and then now, I started late, so my kids are still with me and young enough that I'm not empty nester yet, but it's coming fast and furious. Yeah. I know that.
Yeah.
Or you've had a career your whole life, let's say, and then all of a sudden you get to your 50s and maybe some ageism starts to creep in, and you get a layoff, and then it's hard to go back and find something at this age, or
that's just what happened to Whitney.
Kids are gone, and what do you do? Where do you go from there? And I feel like it's time to tap back in at that point to either new dreams or dreams that you maybe gave up on a long time ago and even might have forgotten about,
Yeah, or adjust the old dreams, that to meet modern day, to meet what's really happening in your life now. But I think you're definitely onto something. I think it is absolutely a time where we all need that support. And, you may have transitioned a lot of things. So like you may have transitioned a marriage, you may have transitioned a job, you may have transitioned where you lived, just a vast number of things in the middle of your life. I joke with a friend of mine that, 4 years ago, we were very stable people. Now, between the two of us, she's renting a home. She's divorced. She's got a brand new career. I've moved from Florida to Washington State, as far away from Florida as I could get. Whitney lost his job to ageism and was out of a job for 2 years. And it worked out well to take care of his mom, but he was still out of a job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think is, you seem to have very gracefully made your change into what you're doing now. What do you think is, what do you think is a reason why somebody would be, what am I trying to say? Well, what would be a specific roadblock that you think another person might run into that they need to get around?
I think the success rate, you know, if you've come off a career that you were pretty successful or you're at least very familiar with, you are coming off something that you can, you know, practically do in your sleep. And as well as a job that maybe provides you a little bit of adrenaline and things like that. So, you know, if you can get past the learning curve of
Mhm.
technology and,
Mhm.
you know, just the new word, you know, all of that. If you can
Oh,
get
yeah.
past that, I think, what do you always say to me? You always say something so cute. About one and done, you
Oh.
know, it, it's better done than
Oh,
none.
better done than perfect. Yes, as a recovering
Yeah.
perfectionist, yes, better done than perfect is the thing I tell myself as often
Yes.
as I have to.
Right. Right. Well, and you know, realistically, um, I'm not have 1,000 people knock down my doors, but I am prepared for that. You know, if something happens and I am able to help thousands and thousands of people, that would just make my heart shine so much more than any, you know, red bottom shoe or giant diamond.
Mhm.
Helping people makes my heart happy. And I think if you can find a way, especially when you've been touched by death, if you can find a way to live a life that's true to you and that is still feeds you and helps other people, I think that's what midlife is for me
Yeah.
personally,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, we've got possibly, a whole lot of time ahead of us, so what are we gonna do with that time, right?
Yes, and you can't like literally. I told Whitney's my husband the other day. I said he just started, you know, after 2 years he started a new job, and I'm doing this, he's doing his thing, and it's new for him because he's working at home. He's never been at home, so you know, a lot of changes. I mean, not just from COVID, he's working at home anyway. um but it is really a crazy time. It's like when you got out of college and you didn't know what you were going to do or what was going to happen, but you have 30 years of experience. So you can
Yeah.
start over. Like I'm 52, right? So if I want to retire at 70, that's what, okay, my math's not that great, but 15-ish years. And so like 13 years. So, you know, 13 years is a darn long time to have a really good career.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I am more fit and healthy and sleep better and everything than I did in my 20s and 30s when, you know, oh, the young can do it. The young can do it. No, I can do it. It
Yeah.
might take me a little longer, but I can do it. And
They
I'll probably do a
actually
better job.
say that people, entrepreneurs or new businesses that are started by people in their middle age are more likely to be successful because of the life experience that comes behind the person starting that business.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so, and I
Totally
think
makes
the
sense.
main thing that we all have to get around is the fear of actually stepping in and doing something new like that.
Well, I think the biggest thing at this, I would agree with you, and that's what I'm teaching right now is like it just sorry for this shameless push, but you know, I'm the anxiety and how to reset your anxiety.
Hmm.
it- we're old enough now to understand where anxiety comes from, where you can pinpoint what makes it happen. I mean, you're old enough to be able to know all of that. It's not like it's a mystery.
Right.
But so you can literally learn how to turn on and off your anxiety, which I feel like goes hand in hand with success, you know. But because not all anxiety is bad, some anxiety is good. You know, it makes you do things. I mean, I'm so
Right.
anxious to go to Walt Disney. I'm so anxious to meet my new friend for dinner. You know, I keep giving all these examples as though we're not stuck inside.
Yeah, I know,
Sorry.
right? Oh my gosh. I mean, but this is an interesting time because I think it's forcing us all to kind of go inward. You mentioned that uh that the anxiety can be useful. It was one of my nieces who actually introduced me to the term eustress. Have you heard of that?
No, what's it called?
Eustress. I
Eustress.
don't know how it's spelled. Eustress. It's stress, I mean, there's stress that causes, if it's continual stress that raises your cortisol levels, right? That's the kind of stress that can make you unhealthy. But
Sure.
eustress is the sort of stress that you, if you step into it and move through it, it actually challenges you. And it's that whole idea of well, anxiety and excitement being two sides of the same coin.
Right.
So it's kind of like two different kinds of stress, like maybe it's just even your attitude going into the stress, you know.
I just was looking it up while we were saying
I
it's
just thought maybe. Uh-huh.
EUSTRESS. And examples of eustress and distress are things like the death of a spouse, filing for divorce, losing contact with loved ones. These that actually speaks to exactly what you're saying. These things are the like, I mean, it may not sound like it's a great thing to file for divorce, but if you need to file for divorce, you need to file for divorce. And, like, I can see where that's.
And an example of eustress would be strength training. Like
Yeah.
you're putting stress on your muscles, but you're building strength in doing that.
Right.
And so the same thing with a challenging new passion project or a new career, that's eustress. That's like, okay, it's stressful, but it's exciting, right?
Right. And it's driving. So like, I totally, I talk about anxiety being an energy, and we just talked about this yesterday, how, that good energy does, I mean, how like when your child is going to be hit by a car, you can stop a car and they're like, well, she's like 95 pounds. How'd she stop a car? Well, it's that
Right.
adrenaline,
Uh-huh.
in
Yep.
you.
Yeah.
And it's like midlife has so much adrenaline built up, but you have to like channel it the right way, because midlife could also go very, very wrong. You could become an alcoholic or a holic of any sort. Your drug dependency, or, eating, dating, sex, all of these things can turn south, which is what we usually hear about. Like, I feel like taking this late bloomer living is taking it down a very positive route, instead of like, oh, did you hear about Larry? He's checked himself into rehab 5 times.
Right.
Like,
instead of a
that.
midlife crisis, I'm looking for, midlife blossoming. I don't know.
Yes, perfect. Which is perfect. That's exactly what it should be doing. And that's where our mindset should be. Like, we should set the bar at a different place. Or, maybe when you're 35, we should start talking about, well, wait until you're midlife and you can really blossom and grow new ways.
Yeah,
then,
right.
Let's change the rhetoric.
Change the dialogue around it.
Yeah,
I like that idea.
Well, and it's all you. Like, I remember, I can tell you exactly where I was when you told me about this idea. I was sitting in the car in Hollywood, Florida, at Oakwood Plaza, in the second parking spot in front of TJ Maxx. And I know, and aren't I weird? And
I love
it. I just thought to myself, genius. Like, what a wonderful way to frame things, and what a great way to be there and stand up and be there for your own midlife. That is fantastic. And I applaud you. I know that roadblock after roadblock in your head has occurred, but I would tell you, in real life, you've made nothing but progress every day. And you've like, the desire to do this and have the podcast and everything else like that is wonderful. And I think that, how we can't go to dinner right now and have a winds up glass to, somebody who's starting a new job. That's what this podcast is going to do for people. It's going to give them the strength and the desire and the understanding to go forward and live their dreams.
Thank you.
How
that is sure
awesome.
What I'm hoping for.
Yeah. Well, and how awesome that you facilitate. Nobody better could facilitate that. So,
thank you, sweetie.
that's, I feel like, she won't tell you this, but, Yvonne, in her back in the her 20s, you were an actress. And that is one of the things that I've always loved about you, is your ability to read a scene and, do what you need to do to get through it. There's quite a skill. And you and your husband are both the same way. And I really think that this is a fantastic platform for people to be able to really aggressively undertake their midlife blossoming.
Thank you so much. So I think we probably need to wrap up. Actually, I think my computer battery's getting low.
Oh no.
But before we go, actually, let's go back to video so I can see your sweet face. I know you all can't see this, but over the podcast, but I do want to see you before I go. I just wanted to ask you before I go, if you could go ahead and do those shameless plugs and let people know what's going on for you next, where to find you, tell them about your book.
I do. I have 2 books. I wrote a chapter in the Lemonade Stand. I took my chapter and I wrote a whole book, and it's called Bare Myself, B-A-R-E, Bare Myself, What Now? How to Regain Control in Your Life. And it's basically the first half of the book is my challenges and struggles I've had until I wrote the book. And then the second part was mainly how I dealt with it and got through it. But I would... Like I wrote it almost a year ago. Like I have learned so much since then. There'll probably be another book. I have a website, www.donitamabear. It's Mama Bear, DonitaMamaBear.com. And then I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and they're all Donita Mama Bear, whatever.
Great. And I'll put links to, so your book's available on Amazon, right? Both as Kindle and paperback, I think at this point, right? The paperback's out. So I'll put links to all that so people can come and find you and check you out. And thank you.
I'll do that to you. Yeah, thank you. It's really an honor. And aside from being friends, I really, even if we weren't friends, it is absolutely an honor to be on your podcast. And I wish you the best of luck in reaching all the midlife bloomers out there.
Thank you so much. All right. Mwah. Love you.
I love you too.
I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Donita. She's great, isn't she? That's why we've been friends so long. Anyway, you can find more information about her at DonitaMamaBear.com. You can check out her book, which is Bare Myself, B-A-R-E, as in bare naked, dare I say. So Bare Myself is the name of her new book, and she also has a chapter in the very inspiring The Lemonade Stand. And if you enjoyed this, I hope you will share it out with people, let people know about the podcast. I would so appreciate that. Feel free to leave a review if you want to. Please stay safe and healthy. And I hope this brings you a little bit of encouragement if there's something big you want to do that feels big, at least. It doesn't have to be big. It can just feel big. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. Bye-bye.